Samaniego here. Want to invite you to go check out Poblis. Poblis is a dog clothing and accessory company based in Austria. 10% of each of your purchases goes to helping dogs in need, whether it's homeless, sick, or ill dogs. This is one of the reasons why we support it. Kiska here is a rescue dog from rural Alaska and our grid office dog. We care about our furry buddies, and we know you do as well. Definitely check out Poblis.com. There's a link on the video description, and by clicking on that link, you get a 10% discount on your purchase as well. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Life Wrap-Up. Joe Samaniego here, as well as Kobe Lambert from The Podium Finish, and Ben Schneider, plus Adam Lemery. We got a lot of racing to discuss, and definitely including a historic Indianapolis 500. We want to thank everyone for tuning in on this Memorial Day. Of course, very somber day for many, especially for the family and friends that lost somebody, given the ultimate sacrifice for the country here in the United States. We start off with, unfortunately, more unfortunate news that we do want to share in regards to an unfortunate tragedy that occurred Saturday. During the Moto3 Q2 session, Jason Despasquier lost control of his motorcycle. He is seen here with his Moto3 number 50 bike. He was struck when he fell off on his motorcycle and another motorcycle hit him. He was attended and flown to Florence, Italy for treatment. Overnight, he was listed in serious condition and even went surgery. Sadly, on Saturday morning following Moto3 race, the race he was anticipated to be in, it was announced that Jason passed away. This was right before the Moto2 race and MotoGP race that followed later that day at Mugello. A moment of silence was observed for him before the MotoGP race, and at the end of the race, you can still see the grief and sadness on everyone in the MotoGP community, especially Moto2 and Moto3. We are thinking of everyone in the MotoGP and the FIM community during this challenging time, especially for family and friends and fans of Jason. Grief is such a heavy emotion and it's almost instinctive not to show it. But opening up to a trusted person is a healthy choice. Mental health matters. We are thinking of everyone. And of course, we encourage everyone to share their comments in the chat room, especially if you were a fan of Jason or some of your favorite memories you have. It was a tragic reminder of the dangers drivers and riders across the globe face each time they're at the racetrack. While safety measures have improved a lot, still the risks are there, and there's always room for more improvement. And we go to Indianapolis, which was a site of some of the bigger improvements. We saw the safer barrier, which came out of Indianapolis. And of course, we even saw the safer barrier be used yesterday, and thankfully the driver walked away.
Yeah, and yesterday we had such a historic Indianapolis 500-mile race, and we'll start with the main storyline coming out of the Speedway. Helio Castroneves became the fourth driver in the history of the greatest spectacle in racing to win it 4 times. The other 3, Al Unser Sr., AJ Foyt, and Rick Mears. Rick earned his 4th win in 1991. 30 years later, in May in front of fans, Helio Castroneves got the job done. 20 years ago, in 2001, it was Castroneves who won his first Indy 500 and climbed the fence for the first time. Castroneves becomes the first part-time competitor to win the Indy 500 since Dan Weldon's thrilling victory in 2011. We talked about that yesterday, actually. So here's the first question of the night. Was Helio Castroneves' win a huge surprise for you?
Unfortunately, yes. And, Kobe, I think that says more about me and everybody else than it does about Helio. But, for Helio to come in here, I always said after I saw him win in 2009, I was still pretty young back then, but I knew that he was going to be the next 4-time winner. I just thought it would happen a lot sooner than having to wait 12 years. I thought he would do it with Penske, and I thought it would come a lot sooner than 2021. And then he finishes second in 2014. He finishes second in 2017, doesn't quite get the job done. And then he is no longer a full-time Team Penske driver, goes off to race sports cars, comes back and does the one-off Indy 500 every year, doing the Grand Prix of Indianapolis as well. Has a chance to come back this season, not with Team Penske, but with Meyershank Racing, with a chassis that was called on the broadcast last year by Townsend Bell the slowest car in the field, being driven by Dragon Speed and Ben Hanley last year. And Meyershank Racing to come out as a relatively new team still in this series with Elio Castroneves in a one-off as a part-timer and win the Indianapolis 500 is absolutely incredible. And there was a great article in ESPN by the great Ryan McGee yesterday that was talking about on Saturday afternoon, AJ Foyt, Al Unser Sr., Rick Mears, the other 3-4-time winners of the Indianapolis 500, they all got together and posed for a picture. And somebody in the crowd was seeing this and shouted at them, "Nobody's ever going to win 4 again." And it was Rick Mears that quietly turned to the other two and said, "Don't forget, somebody's got a chance to do it tomorrow." And, you know, like I said, I thought Elio in my heart was always going to get it done. I just didn't know when it was going to come. I thought it was going to be a lot sooner than this. And I certainly didn't expect it. You know, I like I said, we picked Dixon to win the race. A lot of us did. And he had his problem in the pits. Elio's name obviously was on the list of guys who you thought could win the race. But did you pick him to win the race? Did you call him winning the race? And I think very few people did, given the circumstances. I don't know if people realize just how hard it is to come in once a year, like the late, great Dan Weldon did 10 years ago, as a part-timer compared to all the other drivers, all the other teams that have been running full-time, and go out and beat all of them. You know, it's just, I feel like I could keep going. I know we have a long show and a lot of stuff to get to, but, you know, I may seem like I'm gushing, but I don't care. You know, it's a celebration. Everything about the 500 win yesterday for Elio Castroneves was absolutely incredible. Proved the 500 is the greatest spectacle in racing, and arguably not even just the greatest spectacle in racing, the greatest spectacle in all sports. A great day for Elio, his fans, his team, and the IndyCar series as a whole. IndyCar did not let us down yesterday. It was a great race. Great to see Elio get the win.
As a fan, I was, like you just said, man, nobody picked Elio to win yesterday. I picked Alexander Rossi. Well, boy, was I wrong. Elio was in the top 10 all day long, and we hardly talked about him at all on our IndyCar practice coverage. I believe this is what IndyCar needed, and overall, I'm so happy to see Elio back in victory lane, and I hope in the future he comes back full time in the IndyCar series and proves once again that old guys can not only win the Indy 500. I think he could contend for a championship as well. It was really great to see all the fans at the track yesterday. Over 135,000 were there. To me, the Indy 500 was the best race of this Memorial Day weekend.
When it comes to Helio Castroneves win, it was a huge surprise for me. I started to get to the point where I was thinking he wouldn't get that 4th win at the Indy 500. We've seen Penske, it was there, but we've seen his teammates win. Simon Pagenaud, Will Power. Yes, we know Helio Castroneves was chasing down Ryan Hunter-Reay for the win in the past, but Ryan Hunter-Reay got that win. This year, when I heard it was Meyershank Racing, I thought, well, that's great for the program, the team. Helio's going to bring a lot of experience. They get a top 10 finish. That's great for the team and everybody involved. But boy, were we surprised with how yesterday turned out. He was just up front all day long. And I kept thinking something might happen. A caution comes out at the wrong time. We saw that essentially take out Scott Dixon, who had the fastest car all month of May. We've seen so often the favorite doesn't get to win and somebody like an underdog. We've also seen where an underdog is performing really well, surprising folks, who's not there at the end. I was just thinking it's going to be somebody else. Helio, that 4th win was just outreach. And to see the last lap, I was just on the edge of thinking, where is this going to go? How is this going to end? To see the lap traffic, oh man. Next thing you know, he's there celebrating, and that was a celebration I'll never forget. I still remember his first win at Indy. To see him do this, very historical and just wow, amazing that we got to witness this.
Yes, it was amazing to witness and enjoy. I don't want to make you seem old, but you talk about watching him win his first Indy in 2001. I was only 2 years old when he won his first Indy, so sorry if I made you feel a little old there. But I was really surprised that he won this race. I don't believe we even really mentioned Helio Castroneves at all when Adam and I did the special edition of Grit Tonight all week long during practice. And I can't remember. I don't even think we mentioned him yesterday or anybody picked him. I didn't really see him as a true contender, but as the race went on and Helio kept moving towards the front, I'm thinking, and I actually posted on Twitter, I said, I think a lot of us have been sleeping on Helio Castroneves because this car looks really good. And Ben brought up the good point about the chassis belonging to Dragon Speed last year, the 33rd and slowest car in the field. Meyer Shank took this chassis over, and they were able to unlock a lot of speed in that car, and their program's really been moving forward overall. And they just had the right car yesterday, and a lot of people looking at, I believe it was at the end of 2017 IndyCar season, we kept wondering, is Castroneves going to return to Team Penske in IndyCar full time next year? And I believe he won a race at Iowa that year, and he was like practically begging Roger to let him stay on with the Team Penske IndyCar program. And then we got the news that Acura was starting up a DPI program, and then Helio Castroneves transitioned to that. But we all knew that he did not want to leave IndyCar full time. Yes, it was nice for him to go over, and sports cars had some success over there. But this entire time, it seemed like his heart has been in IndyCar. And at age 46, going out here winning the 105th running of the Indianapolis 500, he shows that he still got it. That old guys can still do it. And maybe next season, winning the Indy 500 this year, if Meyer Shank Racing is able to fund a second entry full time, maybe we'll see Helio try to go out and get that IndyCar championship next year, or however long he wants to continue racing. But I'm sure Helio is going to be hungry to go get win number 5 at some point in the future, so he can stand alone with the most wins in Indy 500 history. And Castroneves and Alex Palou were battling each other lap after lap for the win in the closing stages, and with 2 to go, Castroneves got the lead for the final time, and Palou was unable to reclaim the lead. And a part of it was the lap traffic ahead. Joe, can you explain how lap cars ahead of the leaders played a role in the outcome?
The big thing we saw was how the slipstream, the draft, was very huge. The effect it had, especially if you were following the lead car, it made it where the car behind you would have a hard time catching up. Prior to hitting the lap traffic, when Helio or Palou were on the lead, the person in second place was able to catch to them and make that pass. However, once Ryan Hunter-Reay was in front of them, and then of course in front of Ryan Hunter-Reay was Scott McLaughlin, you now had this effect where essentially it didn't matter where they were position-wise, but more where they were in that line. So it's the same effect to running third place behind the 2 leaders. Helio Castroneves in the post-race interview said he saw this and he knew he had to make that pass to get the lap traffic, followed him because he knew it would be hard for Palou to pass him. And that was the winning move, and I just think that really speaks to experience in Helio Castroneves and recognizing the traffic ahead, the timing of getting to the traffic. You don't want to get there too early, and then next thing you know, lose the lead dealing with them, and just keeping that gap from Palou.
And another historic feat that this was the fastest Indy 500 in history because we had so few cautions, only 2. But those 2 cautions played a significant role in the outcome of the race. The first caution, lap 35, Stephen Wilson crashed entering pit road, and this left the pits closed during the middle of green flag pit stops. And this put pole sitter Scott Dixon and Alexander Rossi in a wrong position. Both of them ran out of gas, went a lap down, and they were not in contention for the rest of the day. The second caution came out when Graham Rahal was leaving the pits, and then the left rear wheel came loose, entering turn 2 on the warm up lane. Wheel came off, hit the outside wall hard, but luckily was able to climb out of the car. But he was dejected because he felt like his team had the right strategy, and if that loose wheel hadn't have happened, he believed he would have been up there battling Castroneves below an award for the win. And also this caution really put Rinus VK and Colton Herta out of the picture to win for the rest of the race. Were you surprised by the lack of caution in this race? and both for pit road mistakes, which played a huge role. I mean, it really seems like something was going on with the brakes on pit road during this race because multiple teams had issues.
Yes. I was very surprised to see this. Normally at the Indy 500, we normally see crashes like toward the beginning of the race, like within the first few 10 to 15 laps. But to see only 2 cautions yesterday, both for issues on pit road, was very surprising to me. Overall, I believe this year's Indy 500 will go down as one of the greatest races in IndyCar Series history. I believe it was the fastest race or the fastest Indy 500 in history. So to see just 2 cautions yesterday was very surprising for me.
Yeah, I got to say, obviously we just talked about Elio's win being a surprise. I remember when Tony Kanaan set the record in 2013 for fastest Indy 500, and I thought that record was going to stand for many, many years. And here we are just 8 years later, and it's been broken again. And it probably would have been even faster. I know everybody was talking about the caution for Stephen Wilson's incident being so long. If they had been able to get that cleaned up even faster and gotten back to green, we would have seen an even faster 500 in all likelihood. So for there to only be 2 cautions, I think is very surprising. Obviously, leading to the fastest race ever, fewer than we usually see at the 500. I think it's a testament to the IndyCar series and their drivers, and the fact that, with the exception of the issues in the pits, nobody put a foot wrong all day. I would have expected, especially on the start. I don't know if we're going to get to that maybe a little bit later on as well, but I thought Dixon on the start initially, I mean, you can see it right there. Everybody's so bunched up. I was worried that there was going to be an incident on the first lap, because normally we see the cars get a little bit more spread out at the start of the race. So even with everything going on, all the pressure of the Indianapolis 500, to only see 2 cautions all day, I'm not complaining, because I think we saw a fantastic race, but certainly a little surprise there.
Yes, and you do bring up a good point about the start. Dixon kind of bunched them up on the start, and we normally see the pole sitter go a lot sooner at the start, but it really reminded me of playing those Project Cars 2 the Project Cars 2 video game, those starts, because it was really bunched up. I was like, oh my goodness, I've never seen a start to the Indy 500 this bunched up. It was just really crazy. And we talked about the young drivers, Alex Palou, Renus VK, Colton Herta, Pato Award. We saw all of them up front leading laps and in contention for the win at various points. Alex Palou is now the championship points leader in the NTT IndyCar Series, and it's really looking like Alex Palou could really be a true contender for this championship. Do you think this could be the start of Palou's championship run?
I do see this being part of Alex Palou's championship run, and the way he's been running, I feel that run started at Barber Motorsports Park. It was very hard the first race of the year. So often we see a driver, new team come in, they could get a win, but then the rest of the season, it doesn't exactly go their way, as they're still learning the team and everything. But we've seen him been consistently good all season long. And then the way he ran the Indy 500, battling Castro Neves, a now 4-time Indy 500 champion, finished second. Yeah, that has to be heartbreaking, but at the end, great effort by him. Got a fast team, and I think a lot of people are also surprised this is the same number 10 team that Felix Rosenqvist was in. 1 win last season. Here we are. He is leading the championship ahead of his teammate, Scott Dixon, who happens to be the defending champion and the favorite entering it. I see him being a serious championship contender, and I think that championship run started back at Barber Motorsports Park in Alabama.
Yeah, you always feel a little bit bad for the guy that comes in second in Indianapolis, and I know points aren't on anybody's mind at Indianapolis just because of the magnitude of the race, but at the end of the day, it was still a very good points day for Alex Palou to be leading the championship right now in a season where it's still his second year. He's just getting started compared to his veteran teammate Scott Dixon. If I had to make my pick now, I still think there's plenty of time for Dixon to make a run and catch him again. Obviously, double points in Indianapolis certainly helps Palou's lead at the moment. But could Alex Palou win the championship? Absolutely.
And I know one person who's really happy with Alex Palou's form this season has to be Chip Ganassi. Chip Ganassi always says he loves winners, and Alex Palou has a victory at Barber, and it looks like with the way he's running right now, he can knock off maybe one, two, or even three more victories before the season is over. And I think the emergence of Alex Palou is really important for the future of Chip Ganassi racing in general, because we don't know how much longer Scott Dixon is going to be racing. It certainly seems like he's on the back end of his career right now, and he's still performing at such an excellent high level. And Chip Ganassi's been trying to find a driver who can get up there, match Dixon in performance. And to be honest, we haven't really seen another driver in the Chip Ganassi racing stable be able to do that since the retirement of Dario Franchitti. And now we have Alex Palou up there, performing better than Scott Dixon, third races of the season so far. And it's really looking like that Alex Palou might be the future lead driver at Chip Ganassi Racing when Scott Dixon decides to walk away from racing. And one driver who did not have a good Indianapolis 500 was Alexander Rossi. It's the black cloud hanging above his head, pouring, thunder, lightning is still there for Alexander Rossi. It seems like nothing can go right at all. Now he's 15th in the points, 147 points behind Alex Palou. So Rossi is in a very deep hole when it comes to the championship. So here's my question: what's left of Alexander Rossi's championship hopes? Is it already game over heading into the summer?
I picked Alexander Rossi to win the Indy 500 yesterday. That didn't really go too well. But if I was Alexander Rossi right now, I better start contending for top fives and top tens. But most important of all, wins. And I believe hopefully it starts when the series goes to Detroit and Belle Isle in a couple weeks. I'm hoping Alexander Rossi has a good second half of the season. I know there's some tracks coming up that I believe he's done really good at. So if I was Alexander Rossi right now, I would have to say you put all your eggs in the basket, you put all your poker chips in, and you just go all out as hard as you can to contend for top fives, top tens, but most important of all, wins.
Yeah, it's going to take more than top fives and top tens, guys. I sent a tweet out yesterday. I don't know if you can see it here, if we can get a focus on that, but that's the point standings right now. Kobe, like you mentioned, Alexander Rossi's 15th in points. Elio is 14th. Elio just ran his first race of the year. I know double points at the Indianapolis 500 kind of throws a wrench into things, but if Rossi's championship is still alive, then somebody get the funding for Elio to run the rest of the season so that he can have a shot at a championship too. I mean, it's just unbelievable to see a guy like Alexander Rossi so far back in points at this point of the year. Seems like nothing has gone right this season. And, we said he had a down year last year. He still had 5 podiums. He didn't get a win, but he still, had a year that a lot of IndyCar drivers would have been very happy with. But, if you're a guy like Alexander Rossi, I think he even said this offseason, if a championship isn't accomplished, anything less is unacceptable than that. So I think, unfortunately for Rossi, like you said, Adam, I think now is when you throw all your poker chips into the middle of the table and just go out and throw caution to the winds and go for race victories, to go off strategy, do whatever you have to do to just go try to win as many races this year as you can, because you're so far back in points. I don't think there's really anything you can do. I mean, it's going to take a superhuman Lewis Hamilton dominance type effort to win the championship at this point for Rossi.
And one thing to add, besides going for wins, he's going to need a lot of luck. He's going to need the front runners to have bad luck, have DNFs, and also different winners. We know Palou has won a race. We had award winner race, Scott Dixon. If we have more different winners, and if he could still stay up there, and while the other have bad luck, that could really help him. But the big thing, he does need those wins. So definitely try to get that. And of course, he's going to need some of the luck. Because Alex Palou, if he doesn't put a foot wrong for the rest of the season and is consistently in the top 5, it's almost going to be too hard for Rossi to get past him.
Yes, I totally agree with you what you guys were saying. I think for Alexander Rossi, I don't really see how he's going to be in contention for the championship at this point. I think it might be game over for him right now, championship wise, unless he goes out there and wins every single race for the rest of the season, or try to at least finish on the podium. And I do wonder. I'm sure everyone remembers a few years ago when Alexander Rossi re-signed with Andretti Autosport, Roger Penske, Team Penske. They were courting him seriously and trying to sign him. I wonder right now if Alexander Rossi regrets not signing with Team Penske, or or reconsidering the offer from Andretti to look elsewhere, because I think Ganassi also threw their name in the ring as well for Alexander Rossi's services. So I'm sure Rossi might be wondering about that, and I'm sure a lot of us are wondering the same thing. What could have been if Rossi had signed with a Penske or a Ganassi? Would things be different right now, or the same old as it's been for him for the past year or so, not being able to break through and find victory lane? And then in the next round for the NTT IndyCar Series is the doubleheader in Detroit on the streets of Belle Isle, June 12th and 13th. We have 6 races down, 10 left, and we'll definitely be following the rest of the IndyCar season here at Grid Network. And the Indy 500 wasn't the only crown jewel race that took place yesterday. A couple of hours after the race ended, we had another one happening in Charlotte, North Carolina, the Coca-Cola 600.
Coca-Cola 600, and that race we saw Kyle Larson become the third driver to earn another win this season, joining Martin Truex Jr., who has 3 wins, and of course his teammate Alex Bowman with 2 wins. Bowman, Elliott, and Byron, all the Hendrick drivers were in contention for the win. So this wasn't just an easy runaway for Kyle Larson. We saw Chase Elliott and him running each other hard. One point, I thought the two of them made contact as they were approaching that lap traffic, which something that became a big talking point yesterday was the number of lap traffics and slow vehicles out there. We didn't see 1 through 4 Hendrick finishers. Kyle Busch was up there, and he didn't really have anything for Kyle Larson. He said during an interview with, I believe, Clint Bowyer or Jeff Gordon, the only way he could really do anything was try to wreck him, but he wasn't going to do that, and nobody was going to stop Kyle Larson earning his first race win that was over 400 miles. Just amazing. He has not won a 500-mile race, and he goes out, wins the 600-mile race. Do you believe that Hendrick is at a point where they're peaking, like what Clint Bowyer said, that it might be peaking a little too early? Or do you believe Hendrick is just this good and everybody now needs to catch up to them?
I don't think Hendrick is actually peaking. I think they're just got the program really good right now, and I think the others need to catch up. I said on the Grid Live pre-race on Saturday that Hendrick Motorsports is in a zip code right now of their own, and everybody else is trying to catch up. I still think on tier 2 after the Coke 600, we have Joe Gibbs Racing, Team Penske, and then you have everyone else below that. And Hendrick Motorsports, they're so freaking good right now. It's almost scary. We could be reaching the level of Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, in terms of domination if they keep up this form, because Hendrick Motorsports is really, really strong at the moment.
You bring up a good point, Kobe. If we look back at history with Hendrick Motorsports, who were their 2 top drivers? Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson. Could Hendrick Motorsports is all 4 of their drivers right now are really good. Chase Elliott, William Byron, Alex Bowman, and Kyle Larson. I don't think anyone after what Kyle Larson experienced last year regarding running on dirt and having his NASCAR license taken away after what he said on a virtual game. When he signed with Hendrick Motorsports, I believe he's out to prove a point that just because I'm not with Chip Ganassi anymore doesn't mean I can win. He came out, he's already won 2 races this year. Don't be surprised if he wins more. And don't also be surprised if if all 4 Hendrick cars are in contention to win this year's NASCAR Cup Series championship.
One of the things you brought up, Kobe, about Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, I see this where this is no longer the Hendrick Motorsports of Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon being the face of the organization. This team, Hendrick Motorsports, they now have four faces. It's no longer just one or two. Chase Elliott is champion. Kyle Larson, 2 wins. Alex Bowman, that 48. And of course, William Byron, who's having a really great season. He was my pick to win. He was up front all day, racing really hard, and had a great battle with Kyle Busch towards the end. The race only had 5 cautions, 3 of them for the stage breaks, and 2 of them for incidents on the track. One for Kurt Busch blowing an engine, and then Ryan Newman, who essentially had the tire go out. It's only the third Coke 600 to finish under 4 hours since 2010. We saw a fair amount of passing during the race and side by side. However, they didn't feel like the racing lived up to the hype, citing that aero package as well. What was your take on the race, and is there potential room for improvement?
You know, Joe, there was no way that Charlotte was going to live up to the hype that Indianapolis had set just a few hours earlier. But I got to tell you, I saw multiple people in my timeline, multiple people that I was messaging back and forth that were actually at the track yesterday. I've heard multiple times that a race seems at least 2 or 3 times better when you're there in person, when you're hearing the roar of the engines, when you're seeing the action unfold right in front of your eyes, and when you don't have to see it through a television broadcast. Those guys were saying that it was tough to sit through. I know Big Motor Small Blade is a good rallying cry on social media and on Twitter. I know it's not a universal fix for everything, but something has to change. This aero package, I don't know if you are set on 550, then fine, but try low downforce with a 550. Something has to happen, because I think the reaction to yesterday's race, and yes, having a spectacular Indianapolis 500 earlier in the day to compare it to certainly didn't help. But I don't know if it's just the fact that it doesn't seem like the Coke 600 anymore, because there's a fourth stage, or evenly divided. And I know people don't like stage racing. Maybe that's amplified when you get to Charlotte, because there were actually more planned cautions that we knew when they were coming in the Coke 600 than actually happened naturally in the Indianapolis 500. Maybe that played a factor in it. But overall, I've talked enough about the package on this show. You know where I stand on it. My feelings on it. It hasn't changed. And the fact that we got the product we saw last night at Charlotte, congrats to Hendrick Motorsports. It's a major achievement for them. Their fans should be proud. They really could have swept the top 4 again last night as well. But in terms of being a neutral fan watching the race, something's got to change with the next gen car, because we can't keep going to these 1.5 mile tracks and putting on shows like we put on last night.
Yeah, and I don't really have much to add to that, just to say I hope they get it right with the next gen car. But I do know in testing on the 1.5 mile tracks that they've been testing a high downforce configuration. So we'll just have to take that with a grain of salt, I guess. Hopefully it will race better than what we currently have with the Gen 6 car, or maybe, like you said, an experiment and race with lower downforce. A lot of people who are way more knowledgeable at how the cars work than I am said that we can have 550 horsepower and put on a good race if you have lower downforce. So maybe that's something that NASCAR will look into, especially if they're going to listen to their drivers, because some of the drivers have even criticized this package, mostly Kyle Busch, talking about how difficult it is to pass in at various points of the Coca-Cola 600 last night. If you listen to the radio, some of the drivers were saying that they were stuck, that they hit that bubble of dirty air and they could not get around the competitor ahead of them.
That dirty air was definitely a big factor we saw when it came to it. One of the things I was really surprised a couple times we saw in the race, where when you had 2 vehicles side by side and that slipstream effect, that third vehicle seemed to go around with ease. But then when it was down to following 101, that dirty air just made it where it was just really hard. Saw a lot more drivers using lap cars as a pick, whereas we seem to be seeing a lot of lap cars going a lap down throughout the race. But overall, it was something where when it came to, I know a lot of people that watch the Indy 500 participating in another race, It's very much two different kinds of races that we saw yesterday. And essentially, the Indy 500 was definitely a hard act to follow. One of the things that was really hard to follow was for Chip Ganassi. Second place at Indianapolis. Of course, down in that race, you're trying to go for the win. NASCAR, they're not exactly the top tier team. And Chip Ganassi didn't have a good day. In fact, their Extreme E team didn't get far in their event, the Ocean XP IndyCar second place. They still had top 10 finishes with Tony Kanaan, but of course, we know Scott Dixon Day was ruined on lap 35. And then NASCAR, no wins so far this season. And then Kurt Busch, blown engine, and Ross Chastain out early in the race, just hanging back there. Not exactly a good day. But Roush Fenway Racing, Chris Buescher, another top 10 finish, 8th place. Ryan Newman, he was running up there. He was 12th place until that tire blew. Are we seeing where Roush Fenway is coming up just as Chip Ganassi Racing is starting to falter?
I do believe so. Rushman Racing has always had a really good history in NASCAR. If we look back, Mark Martin had a very strong, successful career with Roush. Jeff Burton had a good career. Matt Kenseth. So I believe Roush Fenway Racing right now is just above Chip Ganassi Racing. I believe we will see Chris Buescher and Ryan Newman contends for wins this season. And Roush Fenway Racing to me is right above Chip Ganassi Racing in NASCAR right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think Ganassi has been a step behind. It's been surprising to see the resurgence of Hendrick and the resurgence of Chevrolet in the Cup Series, and Ganassi not really be a part of that. I think we expected a little bit more out of Ross Chastain this year. I know it's just his first full-time season with the team, the caliber of Chip Ganassi Racing. But even Kurt Busch, I feel like, has been a step behind this year. He's further back in the points than I would have expected him to be. He has won one race each of the last couple of seasons with Ganassi, so I've got a feeling he'll probably find his way to victory lane at least one more time this season as well. But, I think Ganassi definitely is on the downward trend at the moment, and that's unfortunate to see. But Roush, I think for sure, especially with the positive vibes that are maybe being given off with this rumor of Brad Keselowski coming to not only drive for them, but co-own the team next year. I think if that happens, you can think back to what happened to Haas after Tony Stewart bought into that team, and 3 years later, Stewart won his third Cup Series championship. So I think it's a good time to be a Roush Fenway fan. And, in terms of what happens this season, I don't know, Adam, if Buescher and Newman are at the point yet where they can contend for wins week in and week out, but they're definitely trending in the right direction right now. And you can't, unfortunately, say the same thing for Ganassi's NASCAR program.
And speaking of Kurt Busch, I wanted to bring up a report from Jordan Bianchi of The Athletic that came out over the weekend, that 23-11 race, and it really looks like they're going to expand to a two-car team next year, so Bubba Wallace will have a teammate, and the leading candidate for that ride, Kurt Busch. And time again, we've seen that Kurt Busch come into a program, and by the time he leaves it, it's a lot better than when he got there. So definitely for 23-11 race, I know their brand new team in the Cup Series had a lot of growing pains, and I think having a veteran presence like Kurt Busch to come in, see where they are equipment wise, be a mentor to Bubba Wallace. I think having Kurt Busch come into 23-11 racing next year would be a huge step to get that program moving further ahead than they currently already are as such a young team, if it turns out to be that way.
That'd be really huge, especially for 23-11 to have a second team and Kurt Busch, the experience he brings, something where very few drivers could do that and make a program just a little bit better. Speaking about a little bit better for 23-11, this was the second race in a row where we had qualifying, and the first time in a mile and a half since the pandemic started. One of the big things with the practices and qualifying, we saw some teams like Richard Childress Racing, Roush, 23-11 having solid days. Bubba Wallace fighting for that last point in one of the stages. Didn't exactly get there, but he seemed a little bit better compared to in the races where we don't have qualifying or practice. Should we see more qualifying and practice again at the NASCAR races?
Oh, definitely. And, if you have practice and qualifying, what's that mean? You could bring in the fans, and watch their favorite drivers for practice and qualifying. Bring the tracks in more money. This the souvenir trailers, more money. It'd be more money around for everybody. Overall, hopefully next year with this next gen car that NASCAR has, with everything going in the right direction regarding the pandemic, a lot of the country is reopening. If I were some of these track owners, I would have practice and qualifying again. Why not? We're sort of near the end of the pandemic. A lot of people are getting vaccinated right now, so practice and qualifying. For more tracks next year, I say yes, bring it on.
Yeah, I do understand why NASCAR is not having practice and qualifying this year to try to save a little bit of money because they lost millions of dollars during the pandemic and these race teams were hit really hard. So I do understand why they're not having practice and qualifying. But look at all the other racing series in the world; they have practice and qualifying. So I don't see why I couldn't have practice and qualifying. I think it's really important to get back to those and as NASCAR has been known to change the rules in the middle of the season, so they very well could start practicing qualifying soon if they truly wanted to. And I think having that comeback would be really important for all of the teams, especially the rookie drivers who don't get that necessary track time they need. And we don't need to go back to the past like having 2 or 3 practice sessions. I think maybe 45 minutes to 1 hour, one practice session, that would be enough. And then the one lap of qualifying, put it up or shut up. I think that would be a good model for the future.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add there. I think practice and qualifying are very important. Qualifying, especially. I understand why NASCAR did it last year. This year, not so much, because every other racing series that I can think of that has come back since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic has had practice and qualifying. It hasn't caused too many problems for them. I don't see why NASCAR couldn't do it either. I know they're trying to save the team's money, and that's why it's not going to happen, I don't think, this year, because the teams have already budgeted out and planned for the races where we are going to have practice and qualifying. But I think it's absolutely a must that they come back next year. And when they come back next year, qualifying needs to be something that is postponed, not canceled when Mother Nature makes an appearance and we have to do away with qualifying and set the field by points. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I think Jordan Anderson's Xfinity team is a prime example of why it was needed this year more than ever to have qualifying actually take place and be postponed rather than see a cancellation of it, because it really did screw his team out of 3 entire months of racing, because since they didn't get to race Daytona, and I'm sure they would have been able to race their way in on speed, qualify on speed, they had no points to fall back on, and that blocked them out of basically every race until we got to another race where we had practice and qualifying. So I think they're absolutely a must. You're not going to see it come back this year, I don't think. But next year, it needs to come back, and qualifying in particular needs to happen every weekend to set the field.
I think I make it unanimous. I would love to see qualifying come back, practice. You also had some great examples, especially what happened to Jordan Anderson. Instead of canceling, postponing it, or going back to practice speeds. That's what we've seen some other series. They'll fall on the practice speeds if qualifying cannot take place. Definitely last year, very unique year. Racing an empty racetracks and a virus where we didn't know 100% how contagious or the side effects. Now we're at the point where we're getting out of this. We had fans out there. It was really cool to see on social media the fans sharing their posts at the racetrack with the drivers. Felt like it started getting normal, and I feel it were just missing practice and qualifying, and brought up great points of why that's good for the track, for the fans, as you all brought up, for the competition as well. One of the most fierce competitions we've been seeing lately has to be MotoGP.
But before the start, we had a moment of silence in order to recognize Jason's unfortunate passing. And once the helmets and visors were on, the riders raced the Italian Grand Prix. We saw a dominant Fabio Quartararo take the win, and nobody was able to challenge him. But the big moment was Pecco Bagnaia crashed out while leading, and nobody else had anything for Quartararo, who now has 3 wins this season. Is everyone else in trouble now since Quartararo seems to be putting together a championship run?
I do believe everyone's starting to become a little bit nervous that Quartararo has now gotten 3 wins. It's looking really good, really fast, and he's not showing any signs of weakness. If anything, the driver that said last year that they were questioning Quartararo's ability to go out there and win races, this year he's not been a factor, and in fact, he crashed out yesterday. That's Marc Marquez. The Yamahas are looking really good. He is outperforming his teammate. He is carrying so much confidence. I see him being that championship contender already, and I do think everyone now has to really say, okay, Quartararo, that's the person the way of our championship hopes.
Right now, I do believe it's Fabio Quartararo, or when it comes to MotoGP, it's either Fabio Quartararo or bust. He has 3 wins in the season. I believe if you want to win this championship, you're going to have to find a way to beat Fabio Quartararo. I mean, he looks very dominant right now, and could we see him? And I believe he will win the MotoGP World Championship this year.
Ducati was starting up front, but no Ducati on the podium. In his home Grand Prix, Suzuki was looking at a 2-3 podium until Rins crashed out. Mir started in 9th and worked his way up to the podium spots. Maverick Vinales managed a top 10 finish. So, in your opinion, who is most likely to step up and challenge Quartararo for the championship soon, or is Fabio Quartararo on an island by himself right now?
I believe Fabio Quartararo is on an island by himself right now. He's been strong. He's been really dominant all year long. And like I just said, it's Fabio Quartararo or bust. I believe you're going to have a strong race. I believe Fabio's going to have something wrong with his motorcycle in a race in order to beat him. I mean, I know there's a lot of other contenders right now, but for me, Fabio Quartararo is on an island of his own.
I believe he's getting to that point where he could say he's on his own island. I just still think right now, Ducati, Pecco Bagnaia, Jack Miller, they really need to step it up. They know they could beat him in the high speeds. Jack Miller coming off 2 in a row, didn't get 3 in a row, but he could come back, get that win. Suzuki, they need to improve their qualifying. So often stuck in Q1. We saw essentially Rins and Mir start 8th, 9th, work their way towards the front. Rins, 3rd race in a row or 4th in a race in a row, he didn't score points. He's really good at scoring the points, being up there, seeing him having this. That has to be really stressful for him and Suzuki. Mir got that podium, got up there, but if he was started in that 2nd row, which just goes from essentially 4, 5, 6, or that 1st row with the top 3 riders, he could really put on the pressure to Quartararo. Right now, I feel like it's starting to slip by. The big thing, they need to really step up their qualifying game.
And one story after the race that developed was Pecco Bagnaia saying that the MotoGP Italian Grand Prix at Mugello should have never happened in the first place because they found out about the passing of Jason a couple of hours before the race, and there was no discussion with the riders about whether or not they should have the race or not. And the last time MotoGP had a death in a race, the race was immediately suspended and called off. How challenging is it to handle such a tragic accident at the track, and is there any right way to handle the situation?
When it comes to a situation like this, I don't believe you could have a set protocol just because every situation is so different. Well, we know from what happened Saturday, after the accident, they were showing the replays, but you could hear the MotoGP now saying MotoGP will not show the replays if the driver was unconscious or gravely injured. We know he was in stable condition when they flew him out of the track, and it was overnight getting surgery. Came as a big surprise to everyone right after the first race, the Moto3 race. For fans not familiar with MotoGP, we have MotoGP, one step below that's Moto2, and then Moto3. It was just something where I feel it really caught a lot of people by surprise. They did what they could to paid the respect. And at the end, it is something where Valentino Rossi said it. We could have raced or we could have not raced. But if we didn't race, we will still have the same feeling that we do right now. I just feel like, considering the circumstances, it's really hard to say what is the right way. But I do feel like one of the big things is just what we feel is respectful for the person that we've lost.
Yeah, Joe, I don't think there is one blanket correct right way, objectively right way that you can honor somebody like this. And, you know, it's no secret if you're a regular viewer of this program that I don't chime in very much on the MotoGP discussions. And the reason for that is because I'm simply not as familiar. You know, I've tried to get into it here and there, but if I'm being completely honest, I think it's important for me to be honest with you all. I've had a harder time getting into MotoGP because of the danger aspect to it. I know racing is an inherently dangerous sport. If you crash a race car, you know, you have the car to absorb a lot of the impact. You're inside the car, it takes the brunt of the impact. When you're in a motorcycle crash, you know, there's simply not nearly as much there to protect you. And so it's always going to be incredibly, incredibly dangerous. I have tremendous respect for all the riders, everybody involved with MotoGP and in the sport. And I'm ashamed to say I hadn't really heard of Jason before his tragic passing this weekend. But, you know, I think back to being a middle schooler and watching Dan Weldon lose his life at Las Vegas. And, you know, I think that was a situation where even if Weldon hadn't been seriously hurt or killed, there was enough substantial damage to the track that the race would have had to be red flagged for that long anyway. And then maybe IndyCar could have finished the race. Maybe they could have not. But the fact that everybody had gotten word of Dan's death before they had an opportunity to restart the race just kind of sealed it, that there was no way that the drivers would have been in a position where they could have gone out and continued to race again. I think back to 12 years earlier than that, and I was only a few months old at the time, but when Greg Moore was killed in an IndyCar race, a kart race at the time, at Fontana, the race was going on under green flag conditions when Moore's death was announced to the public. So when you're in the middle of the race, I think, if I remember correctly, I think Montoya won that day, and he didn't even find out about Moore's death until after he had finished the race. So in a situation like that, you know, I think any driver, and I certainly can't speak for drivers because I'm not one of them, but I would think most of them would probably want their fellow drivers or riders or whatever to race on in their memory. They wouldn't want to see the race canceled. I remember Dale Earnhardt once told Richard Childress, if anything happens to me, you know, you go on and go to the next race. And that's exactly what they did at Rockingham in 2001. At the same time, I understand being in a position where it would have been very difficult to go out and do that. And I think this doesn't get talked about enough. Charles Leclerc going out at Belgium a couple of years ago, winning his first Formula One race after Antoine Hubert was killed. You know, I think that takes tremendous strength and courage. And, you know, there's something different about race car drivers that allows them to do that. When James Hinchcliffe was nearly fatally injured at Indianapolis, I remember him saying that he woke up from the crash and one of the first questions he asked his doctor was, when can I get back in the race car? You know, just the strength that these guys have is absolutely unbelievable. So, you know, to bring it all back and answer your question, I think it's incredibly difficult. And I think no two people handle grief the same way, no matter what the circumstances are. There's not one right way to handle it. And I think it's something that you have to handle on a case-by-case basis. I'm not nearly as qualified as other people might be to give my opinion on what MotoGP should have done this weekend, but I do understand both perspectives of it. You want to honor your fallen fellow rider by having the race, or you want to honor him by stepping aside and not having the race. I do see both sides of it.
And on June 6th, the Catalan Grand Prix is going to take place in Spain at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Fabio Quartararo looking for win number 4 of the season, and everyone else is trying to catch up. And right now, Nico Rosberg's team is leaving everyone behind in Extreme E, and they're trying to play catch up as well.
trying to play catch up because 2 races down in the inaugural season of Extreme E, and only one team, Nico Rosberg's team, has claimed victory, this time at the Ocean X Prix at coming yesterday, and they now have a commanding championship lead. Second place in the race, Veloce Racing, with Stefan Sarazan and Jamie Chadwick. Great run for the two of them. Of course, one of the reasons we saw Jenson Button's team, they got in that final race, and that first corner contact with Sir Lewis Hamilton's team. So the both of them falling towards the back, allowing Jamie Chadwick, Stefan, get second place. Considering they had to withdraw from the first race, get second place, that's huge. Very exciting stuff. Very overall good race. Now, one of the big things when it comes to racing, do you believe, especially now that we have Rosberg's team 2 for 2, do you believe they're going to make it 3 for 3 with the Arctic X Prix, which is coming up next?
Well, based on how they've been running to start the season so far, when we finally get to the Arctic X Prix for that pick a winner, it's going to be hard not to pick any other team right now because Nico Rosberg's team is doing everything right. Well, everything the correct way in Extreme E right now. I know when it's a new series like this, it's really hard to pick who you think is going to win because you don't really know who's good at this yet. But it really seems like that Rosberg's team is definitely the team to beat right now. It would not surprise me if they knock out 3 wins in a row.
When it comes to Extreme E, I believe Nico Rosberg's team is a contender for the championship. Regarding pick winner, I picked his team with Molly Taylor to win. Molly Taylor is a renowned rally ace in Australia. So I believe Nico Rosberg's team will be the team to beat when the Extreme E goes to Greenland for the next round.
Greenland is going to be a very exciting round. Of course, the Arctic X Prix, 5 rounds total this season. And essentially, we've seen Hamilton and Rosberg team, they've made it to the final race in both rounds. Andretti Autosport's Button and Veloce has made 1 final round appearance. At the Science team and Chip Ganassi has not made it. They are further behind with only a few rounds left. How crucial is it for the teams to get their performance, turn around, and try to get in that final round to score the big points?
I believe with Chip Ganassi Racing, if we talk about his organization overall, he's been very successful in motorsports in general. To see Chip Ganassi now running really good in Extreme E right now is kind of disappointing. Hopefully his team will contend for wins as the season continues.
Oh yeah, it's going to be extremely important for the other teams to get in line, improve their program, and get the season turned around. Because Rosberg's team is going to, at some point, if their strong form continues, they're going to run away with this championship battle, and there's going to be nobody else out there to compete with them.
Definitely, I think I have to make it unanimous. Agree with you all, especially Chip Ganassi Racing. They just have had bad luck, and just seems like they are just missing something to get everything turned around. August 28th, 29th, the Arctic X Prix in Greenland. More time zone friendly for all of us here in the United States, so hopefully a lot more television coverage we'll see. And now we recap the Xfinity Series at Charlotte.
Yes, we already talked about the Truck Series, the race that happened on Friday night on Grid Live pre-race Saturday, and the Xfinity race took place right after we went off the air, and it was a Saturday doubleheader at Charlotte Motor Speedway. ARCA and Xfinity. First, it was the Xfinity race won by Ty Gibbs. Then later that evening, the ARCA race also won by Ty Gibbs. So Ty Gibbs is really racking up a lot of wins right now and looking like a true superstar of the future. It's really crazy to see how good Ty Gibbs is right now at such a young age, and it certainly seems like at some point soon, within the next couple of years or so, we're probably going to see Ty Gibbs racing in the NASCAR Cup Series, and it certainly looks like he's here to stay in NASCAR for a very long time. And here's Adam with coverage live from the track.
Hi, this is Adam Limerick with the Grid Network Xfinity Series update. The race at Trotmore Speedway was really good. Daniel Hemrick swept the first two stages of the event, but in the end, it was Ty Gibbs, driving for Joe Gibbs Racing, claimed the third and final stage en route to the victory. Had a really fun day, and it was awesome to see families and fans back at the track.
Great video coverage there of the finish of that race. And definitely one of the big things we're, of course, following the grid ranking and World Motorsport League. The grid World Motorsport League in the 15th week has another leader, third different leader in 3 weeks. Max Verstappen with a victory at Azerbaijan could potentially reclaim that lead. And of course, Fabio Quartararo is in the top 10 after scoring a big win at Mugello in the Italian Grand Prix for MotoGP. Now, in the grid ranking, no lead changes there since the Repco Supercar Series race weekend was postponed. In fact, no changes in the top 5. However, Fabio Quartararo, he moved up to 6th place. You see Kyle Larson, he's moved up to 7th place. And Alex Palou overtook Scott Dixon and is now 8th place, while Scott Dixon fell out of the top 10. Next race weekend, we have Formula One, NASCAR, and World Rally Championship. Elton Evans and Sebastian Ogier, both of them tied for 2nd place. Neither one of them could catch up to Shane Van Gisbergen this week, but definitely will help them gain ground. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, they enter 3rd, 4th to Baku, a track with a reputation of wild races. So definitely a very unpredictable race weekend for them. When it comes to the 4 drivers, which pair of drivers do you think has an easier road to victory next week? Evans and Ogier or Verstappen and Hamilton?
Well, to be honest with you, Joe, I'm going to go out on a limb and say neither pair of drivers because it's going to be really competitive in World Rally Championship between Sebastian Ogier and Sir Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen. It seems like they're equal right now, going neck and neck. I know Max Verstappen has one up on Lewis, especially after going to the winner's circle at Monaco, and we'll have to see if Lewis is able to respond with a race victory on the streets of Baku.
I believe it's Sir Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen right now. I know Kobe just said both Formula One and World Rally are really equal at the moment. But when it comes to I'm going Sir Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen.
Now, also, as I mentioned, Kyle Larson overtook Denny Hamlin. We have 2 NASCAR drivers in the grid ranking top 10. And if Kyle Larson wins, he would tie Fabio Quartararo with 3 wins and overtake him in the grid ranking. The next race weekend is at Sonoma. Is Kyle Larson one of the top 3 favorites to win at Sonoma next weekend?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to correct something I said earlier when I was talking about the race where Greg Moore was killed. I said I thought Montoya had won that race. I just looked it up. It was actually Adrian Fernandez. Montoya finished 4th that day. Like I said, I was very young, and my memory is kind of fuzzy there. I think I was thinking about Montoya's comments after the race, so my apologies about that. But Joe, to answer your question, I think like we've been talking about, Hendrick Motorsports is certainly the team to beat in NASCAR right now. And I think back to Larson's rookie year, he went out and won the West race at Sonoma, so he knows how to drive the track. I think Chase Elliott has to be considered the favorite just because of his record on road courses in recent years, and we saw it again at Circuit of the Americas. But you could definitely see Kyle Larson be a contender to go to victory lane at Sonoma this week.
Yes, I certainly think Kyle Larson is one of the top 3 favorites to win at Sonoma, and you bring up a good point about Chase Elliott and his impressive stat line with road courses. But one thing I also want to point out about Kyle Larson, when he was at Chip Ganassi Racing, he could qualify really well at Sonoma, and then once the race started, he just faded and was never a real contender for the win. But now he's with Hendrick Motorsports, and definitely an upgrade in equipment there, and in better equipment with Hendrick. Maybe we'll finally see Kyle Larson get it done at Sonoma.
And of course, Thursday, World Rally Championship will start our Rally of Italy. And then Sunday, we have Formula One Azerbaijan Grand Prix and NASCAR Sonoma Road Course Racing. And definitely tune in Saturday for Grid Life Pre-Race as we're going to preview all those races plus an update on World Rally Championship.
Now it's time for the Grid One shining moment. Each week we always try to find something from the racing weekend that we thought stood out more than anything else. And today we're gonna start with you, Adam. What's your Grid One shining moment from the race weekend?
That's easy. The Indianapolis 500 is my one shining moment. We saw action throughout the race, and in the end, we saw Helio Castroneves become a four-time winner of this most spectacle race in motorsports. And overall, the fans got what they deserved.
I think it's going to be unanimous. It has to be Helio Castroneves win that fourth historic Indy 500. And one of the things I do want to also share with Helio Castroneves, he had a decal for Andrea Ribeiro, who raced in kart. Fellow countryman, mentor for Helio Castroneves. He passed away not too long ago. And definitely post race, he said he felt Andrea was there to help him with that last pass. So definitely, I have to say, when it comes to that race, Helio Castroneves winning. And of course, we've been talking a little bit about Greg Moore. Greg Moore was going to be in that Penske seat. When he passed away, that went to Helio Castroneves. That put him with Joe DeFerrin. The rest is history. But definitely, I have to say, Indy 500, Helio Castroneves.
Yeah, Joe, I think if there were ever a week where it was unanimous, this is going to be it. My one shining moment is also not just Helio Castroneves, but the whole Indianapolis 500. I think everybody should go on Twitter right now and look at Jeff Gluck's tweets, just the pure sound from the fans. There was definitely something missing last year when Takuma Sato won, and I feel bad for him that he didn't get to experience what Helio got to experience this year and what he had gotten to experience 3 years earlier in 2017. That was not only one of the greatest races I've ever seen, but one of the greatest post-race celebrations I've ever seen. It reminded a lot of people, I think, of the 1998 Daytona 500 and the line, every man on every crew coming to celebrate and congratulate Helio Castroneves. I don't think there was anybody in the entire facility that was disappointed with the race result. And, you know, like we said, Helio just did a tremendous job to get his fourth 500, thoroughly deserving. And I know we talked a little bit before we came on the air. I've been a race fan for almost 15 years now. I think I have to have seen across NASCAR, Indy, F1, ARCA, IMSA, Le Mans, you name it, well over 1,000 races in my lifetime. I'm struggling to think off the top of my head of a race that topped what we saw on Sunday. The Indianapolis 500 had absolutely everything, a four-time winner for only the fourth time ever, the fastest 500 ever. The entire 500 is my one shining moment this week.
And we're gonna make it unanimous. That's also my great one shining moment. But I want to focus on co-owner Meyer Shank Racing, Mike Shank. Mike Shank's been a car owner for a while now. I remember Mike Shank all the way back in the Grand Am Rolex Sports Car Series days when he owned the Daytona Prototype program, been driven by Oz Negri Jr. and John Pugh. And when he switched over, when the series merged the Grand Am and the American Le Mans Series into the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, as we know it today, during that time, Mike Shank also bought a Dallara IndyCar chassis in the early 2010s because he kept saying that I want to be an IndyCar team owner someday. And while that was on the back burner at the time, he went to IMSA with the Ford Daytona Prototype program, and then he switched to a Honda powered Ligier and a LMP2, and that eventually led to him getting a contract to race Acuras in the GT Daytona class, and the team did so well working with Acura Honda there. He was awarded an Acura DPI program this year. A big step up. And looking at what Mike Shank's been able to do throughout his career, a few years ago, the team Meyer Shank Racing made his debut in the Indy 500 with Jack Harvey. They ran part-time for a couple of years before going to full-time. This year, Helio Castroneves, that second seat, win Indy 500 and be a part of history. Mike Shank's been wanting to be an IndyCar team owner for many years, and to go out there and win one of the greatest races in the world is such a feel-good story for Mike Shank.
Such a feel-good story. First time unanimous for one shining moment. Encourage everyone. Be sure to subscribe to us right here on YouTube. Definitely, we want to thank all our new subscribers. We're at 203. We gained some more. And we want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Indy 500 pre-race show. Over 400 views. Definitely thank you so much. Really means that when you're watching us provide you with great racing content before the race, especially the day of the race. Be sure to check out Publis, 10% discount for Green Network viewers. Dog leashes, clothing, and accessories. All sorts of goodies for your furry friend. And definitely invest in the Grid Network. Help keep us on the air. We have 3 wonderful Patreon supporters. So appreciative of them. They'll begin in 2021. 2021 year review and essentially the big annual report of where the money will be invested for the upcoming year. So definitely want to thank everyone for investing in the Grid Network, watching our program week in and week out. We'll be back on the air this week. And of course, definitely very excited for the upcoming weekend for the Grid ranking. For Kobe Lambert at the podium finish, Adam Lemeries, and Ben Snyder, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful evening. Joe Samaniego here. Want to invite you to go check out Publis. Publis is a dog clothing and accessory company based in Austria. 10% of each of your purchases goes to helping dogs in need, whether it's homeless, sick, or ill dogs. This is one of the reasons why we support it. Kiska here is a rescue dog from rural Alaska and our Grid office dog. We care about our furry buddies, and we know you do as well. Definitely check out Publis.com. There's a link on the video description, and by clicking on that link, you get a 10% discount on your purchase as well.